Good morning, everybody. My name is Jared Owen, and I am the Chief Digital Officer for SOAR Group here in the UK. I'm going to be the moderator for our first panel session today, The Foundations of Becoming Data-Driven. For those of you that don't know, SOAR Group has been operating within the North Sea for close to 30 years, delivering business technology and data solutions. What I'm going to start with, however, this morning is talking about Lego. One of the fun parts of Lego is you can throw all of the pieces together in one giant tub and then start to build something by searching through a sea of bricks and then trying out new patterns and building new things that you hadn't thought of building before, because in lots of cases, the original instructions you received are no longer available. Those of us that work in data understand the process. It takes about 80% of cleaning up the data and then deploying exploratory analysis to that data. And our data comes in many forms. It comes in unstructured, it comes in structured, and it comes in real time. The real value of the data becomes when we start to give it purpose. And that purpose for the oil and gas and the energy transition is around learning from what we have done before, what to avoid, and gathering actionable insights along the way. If we get that right, it can help maximize the life of our oil and gas installations and help transition best practice into renewables such as wind, carbon capture and storage, and into hydrogen. However, there's a but. There's always a but. What if you can't find the data? What if the data is not what you thought it was? That leads to a lack of trust in the data. Now, to amplify that point, I have brought with me a box of my 5-year-old's Lego. So we believe this to be the energy industry's data, because I've said it is, and we take a look in this data, I think we'll find, normally I would empty all this on the floor as a 5-year-old would, but for today we'll use something different. We have Duplo. Anyone who's ever watched the Lego movie knows that Duplo is not the friend of Lego. That's not good data. In here we have a Hot Wheels car. That's really good fun for playing with, but that's not good data. What else have we got in here? We have some birthday cards stuck on some chewing gum to another piece of Duplo. Yeah? So what happened here? What happened with the Lego? You see, when you're using a box of Lego as a child, there's no governance, there's no process, there's no standards applied to the use of a box of Lego. It's a free-for-all. It's chaos, yeah? So my son's been in the Lego, the dog's probably been in the Lego, his friends have been in the Lego, but the biggest crime here is late at night when the Lego's been strewn across the floor, I've cleaned it up. So at the end of the project, I've just gone and gathered all of everything I could see and thrown it in the box as data. And I'm not saying all of our data in the energy industry is like that, but you could see how some elements of that could certainly be applied when you don't think about the data at the start of the project and use it as an afterthought. This morning, we're going to discuss the importance of foundational data and governance when considering that shift to becoming a data-driven organization. I'm joined on the panel today by individuals who spend a significant amount of their time working in and amongst data, not only for their own organizations, but for their customers as well. So it's great to have Chris Ayres from OPEX here, Stuart Harvey from Proserv, and Gary Hickin from EnergyVue. I'm going to let them all introduce themselves properly because they'll do a much better job of that than I will. So maybe Chris, if I could start with you.
We provide AI-powered digital solutions primarily to the oil and gas industry to help them on their energy or fulfill their energy transition ambitions. So that's whether that's looking directly at the emissions consequences of their day-to-day operations or perhaps the reliability of their key systems and processes. We've been helping our customers for 7 years plus, I think, in this field, trying all sorts of different things to help them on their digital and, more importantly, their reliability and emissions reduction journeys. And I'm pleased to be invited to talk today on this panel. It'll be a really interesting session, I hope.
Yeah, I'm Stuart Harvey. I'm Director for Digital Innovation, work for Proserv. Proserv are an independent controls technology company. So we provide the control systems that are the critical infrastructure to make systems in energy work, function, produce, be it oil and gas or electricity. I'm really looking forward to today's panel. Yeah.
Finally, I'm Gary Hickin. I've worked in the energy data industry for about 18 years. I'm currently the CEO of EnergyVue, even though my real title is probably more of a data geek. EnergyVue, basically, our job is to look and collect all of the data from all of the assets and connected sensors. So we've created a bunch of tools that allow you to do that, to bring that into a solid data platform that can then sort of hopefully invigorate and allow people to use that data to do more like analytics, etc. on top of that, and also visualize all of that data in real time. And I'm really happy to be on this panel today. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. So maybe to sort of kick us off as a bit of a theme, in our energy industry, we have lots of vintage formats. We have industry-specific standards. We've got unreadable quality information, and all this sort of, which is sort of hampered to a degree a take-up of technology that's maybe long played an important part in other industries. So I think tackling this legacy data really has to be a priority if we're going to leverage machine learning, artificial intelligence, cognitive search technologies that are on the market. And we have to ask ourselves, is there an appetite from the industry to sort of tackle this? So maybe, Stuart, if I come to you first, how do we deal with that legacy data and how do we leverage the latest sort of technology and innovation that's available to us?
On that note, I'm not sat here representing Proserv claiming that, we've solved this problem. Internally within Proserv, we ourselves have issues with our data that we need to work on and continually to work on as well. But in terms of resolving that issue, I think there's many different ways of approaching it. And certainly I've learned a lot in the 2.5 years that I've been in this role, because I'm not a data expert. I predominantly have always worked in the development of new technology and the commercialization of new technology. So this is a new industry for me. And what I've learned quite recently is, and it's obvious when you take a step back and think about it, no one likes the chore, if we use this analogy, of trying to sort out your Lego. And equally, your senior leadership team and shareholders probably don't want to invest in that anyway as a task, because that as a task on its own takes considerable time, effort and money, and you don't get any return as a task standalone. So what I've learned quite recently on a project that we've done with an operator in the Gulf of Mexico is start with building a solution that's based around foundation analytics. So don't start with machine learning and AI, because the likelihood is you'll tie yourself up in knots, particularly if you already know or suspect that there might be issues with that data source, because you'll end up training that model to think that a piece of Duplo is a piece of Lego, and then you're stuck anyway, right? So we were lucky enough to work with this client that was extremely flexible, to the point where we essentially broke all of the rules of project management. There was no scope of work other than the client had a desire to have a real-time remote monitoring system on an entire subsea production system. That was literally the scope of work. And the way that we approached it was to create a design philosophy document rather than a scope of work. So we laid out, look, these are our intentions of how we're going to approach this problem. And some of the content in that document was, look, we're deliberately going to avoid any sort of mimics of screens and analytics and trending solutions that you see in the control room, because there's no point. You've got that, albeit it's in the control room, but we're not going to replicate that in an onshore environment, because we don't believe that's how this problem should be solved. And the client was like, yeah, fine, sounds good. And we'd shown the client nothing at this stage. That's all we'd shown them. So when we got access to the data, we set about building that task. So we're using industrial data, in this case, straight out of a Pi historian, which I'm sure you're all familiar with, and built the visualization, made sure that it was intuitive and easy to use, and built in what we call foundation analytics. So in other words, nothing overly complicated. And then shared that with the client and the team that would be using this. And we knew that, as is often the case, particularly for an external party, there would be some skepticism in terms of what it was that we were delivering and how we approached it. And we started walking through with the team what we delivered and giving them some training sessions. And in those sessions, we had some of the people on the operational side looking at the screen going, yeah, you see that on well A, annulus pressure? Yeah, that's not annulus pressure. I know that well, really well. I just know it's not the annulus pressure. Right, okay, fine. And then, 10 minutes later, same thing would come up. 15 minutes later, another thing. And we were like, okay, fine. So we just took that away as an action to go away and confirm and check. And sure enough, we went back and we went through the tag naming conventions of all of these pi tags. And sure enough, the wrong pi tag names had been given to the annulus pressure and many of the other data tags. So it wasn't that what had been built and created was necessarily wrong or what it was performing was wrong. It was that there were bits of Duplo within the Lego. But because the user team had bought into using this solution and they saw the value now that it had been created, albeit just in a corner of that Lego set, they saw the potential and then had the will and motivation to want to start sorting out their Duplo from their Lego. So that was a recent experience that I had in terms of how to solve that problem rather than giving someone a task of, sort out all your data.
Yeah, thanks, Stuart. I mean, Chris and Gary, both OPEX and EnergyVue have sort of technology solutions working with platforms. And to a degree, you have to work with this industry data. Yeah. So, you get data sets provided to you to work with that are effectively in this box. Yes. In some cases, you don't know what's in that box. So you may have an idea, but you may come across data that you can't work with. So have you experienced a need to address some of the legacy data that we're working with when your teams have been going about their work?
If you don't mind, Chris, I'll go first. So yeah, sure. I definitely have. We've experienced where there's been a sort of transition of technology where they've gone to one provider to another provider, and often what will happen there is you have the data in one flavor and then the customer has a wish to bring it to a new flavor. And one of the things we do, we always kind of sit down and say, how would you like your data to be? How do you want it structured for all of your assets going forward to set that foundation ahead? And then we talk about, right, what do we need to go back and look and how can we fix that data? And there's ways around it, but the big questions we need to ask is, what are you trying to get out of that data? Andy mentioned before about, 1 billion data points. If there's 1 billion data points, do you need that 1 billion data points? Can you create aggregates of that data? Can you strip it down? Can you extract features from that data? Can you take a subset of that data that's basically going to give you all the information you need for your future plans? We always say, keep your historical data, no matter its flavor. Keep a copy of that to one side. You can always extract that information from it. But it's more about a discussion and figuring out, what the customers are looking for from that data, how you can sort that data going forward. So taking that real-time information that's coming in and basically arranging that in the right way, and then looking back at that historical data and really asking that question, what do you need to get out of this?
Yeah. Chris?
Well, the good news is we're all, I think, 100% aligned on this case. I was going to say, actually, I am one of those people who really does quite like sorting out Lego at the end of the day, and once it's all over the floor into separate colors. And I have to remind myself that the reason I bought the Lego was, first of all, for my children, not for me, which is a difficult hurdle to overcome, but more importantly, for them to play with, right? Not for them to sort and put into, and again, this is just, I'm trying to reiterate, I guess, the points that have been raised already. You really have to identify the outcome, the value driver. What are you looking to do? What are you looking to get after? And actually, if you can find those pockets of opportunity, those existing pain points within your own organization, where there's an opportunity to use data, you could just start a journey, and that journey may be a little bit iterative. You'll obviously do some exploratory work to understand what data is available, what quality that data is, how many socks and Duplo bricks are in there, and you can provide that quality assessment. But in the end, you can often provide a solution, and as you've just said there, the providing the solution will help to uncover further issues with the data that can be quite quickly rectified and keep you on that journey towards delivering the outcome. And then, of course, you just build that momentum. And once, the end users see the value that data brings, it provides incentive in its own right to make sure that you maintain that data. It gives them I guess as long as you can connect those parts of the organization that provide the data and need the data, which I appreciate is a bit of a challenge, and possibly where that governance comes in. We've also found that you can, the incentivization to acquire new data comes from that iterative process as well. And that new data doesn't need to be highly complex, highly technical, or expensive. I mean, it's moving from, taking panel data once a shift in an Excel spreadsheet to a handheld device that takes it straight into the historian, and instantaneously you've got access to new data. It's been acquired by humans, so it will potentially have some challenges associated with it. But as long as everybody knows that, you can build the analytics to accommodate quite a lot of those challenges.
Yeah.
Start with the end in mind.
I quite like that. It's a little bit of a segue into the next part of the section. And this bit does touch a little bit on skills, but we won't dive too deep in it because I know Andy's running a session on it sort of next, sort of after lunch. But does it need to be perfect? Does the solution initially need to be perfect? Does the data need to be perfect? We certainly need to attract a new generation of digital skills into the industry. Andy touched upon that in his opening session. There's that sort of language barrier between some senior leadership and some of the digital natives that start to work with some of the technology. We need to extract some insight and some value. Really, we're going to be data-driven as an industry. And we need to think about what lessons that we can learn from other industries, but also how do we attract maybe some of the data scientists, some of the engineers, some of the analysts that have been deploying their trade, so to speak, in other industries into ours. But also we have to ask ourselves, what place do the traditional data custodians have in our energy industry? What about the data managers? What about the document controllers? What about the IM specialists? What part do they play in the shift? Maybe Gary, have I come to you first on that?
Yeah, sure. So you mentioned other industries there. One thing that I think is really important is that we sort of learn from these industries. One example I've used, and I'll use it again, is a company called Rio Tinto, and basically they had a vision in 2008 to create the mine of the future. So basically they had set out a vision. They said, right, we want to cut our costs. We want to basically automate our whole processes, including our drilling. We want to automate our vehicles. We want to increase safety. So they laid out that vision, and they said to do that, we need data, and we also need to look at other industries. And what they did is they actually looked at the oil and gas industry, and they came over to see, what are the oil and gas industry doing? What are they doing well? What are they looking to improve upon? And then Rio Tinto went away, and basically they followed through with their vision. So if you go on YouTube or just Google Rio Tinto Mine of the Future, you'll see they've now got driverless trucks. They've got automated drilling, where the vehicle is driving up with no driver and they're drilling into the ground, to extract the minerals and stuff they're looking for. So they've taken that journey. They've looked at another industry. They've applied, the good things from that industry and then taken that one step further. And, kind of along today's theme, the main thing for them was data. They said, we've got 3 things we need to do. We need to collect that data. We need to get information from that data. And we need to make decisions based on that data. So, that look into another industry and that vision has really done it. So in theory, we need to have that vision as well. We need to say, what does good look like? What does tomorrow look like? How do we get to that? And what industries do we need to speak to kind of extract that knowledge and that sort of spark that will allow us to generate that vision going forward.
Thanks, Gary. Maybe Chris, if we come to you next, sort of what does that good look like for that sort of next digital generation for us to attract them into the industry?
Yeah, so you can't avoid a conversation about how we attract people into our industry across the disciplines. I think for me, from a sort of data perspective, and I guess leveraging the data that exists, we have all of the ingredients, right? All of the things that you need. We have huge volumes of data. Yes, we can spend probably the rest of today talking about the quality of that data and how easy it is to access, but we have huge volumes of data. We've got capability. There's that willingness to solve complex problems, and we have a very exciting challenge to solve. The energy transition is a huge opportunity, and actually a very attractive opportunity if it's communicated in the right way. So the first thing is really making sure we tell our story, because I actually think that it is a really appealing story to the younger generation about the transition that we're going through and the opportunities that it presents, and bridging the gap between the energy of the future, the energy of the present, and the energy of the future. And the other thing I would say is we sort of, I think there is a risk that we talk about these new capabilities, data scientists and whatnot, as being very isolated from the challenges that we face, which we consider to be in this industry, particularly sort of very conventional engineering focused. Actually, one of the things we found at OPEX is that our data scientists now, because they've been really engaged in solving specific challenges for the industry, that they are as capable of understanding really some of the complexities of oil and gas processes, whether those are relating to the emissions from fuel gas consumption or flaring, or the reliability of a gas compressor. Now, they're not rotating equipment engineers, but they've really come together, and that to them is an exciting new learning experience, and they're helping to solve challenges. And who wouldn't want to spend their life getting after these exciting challenges?
Stuart?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. And just to build upon what Chris said, for me, there's no right or wrong answer with a lot of what we're discussing today. I think the key thing for me is you've got to do something, because if you do something, you're going to learn, right? But to build on what Chris was just saying there, I've witnessed it in Proserv, where we've had people that have conventionally always worked in subsea controls design, HMI design, but now we're witnessing them develop their skill sets and evolve into considering different design philosophies, different methodologies of doing analytics, and at the same time backfilling it from the other side, which is people that have a background in data science wanting to have an appreciation for understanding the hardware and the functionality of the equipment. And I think it's when you bring those two things together, you end up with that really good marriage of developing that value of a team of people that just want to solve problems. And I think when you create that culture and environment, it becomes extremely powerful. And coming back to the example I was using earlier, that's something that we've witnessed and seen with that project, where the giving that team that set of tools is changing the culture of that company. So when we have identified something which isn't considered as a normal state, it's gone to the reliability engineers, and they've just sort of shrugged their shoulders going, yeah, that stuff happens. And we're like, yeah, okay, fine, but now it's visible. Now we're giving you the opportunity to ask open questions amongst your team and to get to the bottom of, well, why is that occurring? Is that a normal feedback loop? Why did you change this? Is it having a positive impact? Is it having an unknown or an unseen negative impact on the reliability or the performance of the rest of your system? Because in our industry as a whole, oil and gas, renewables, these are complex pieces of equipment. There are known and unknown feedback loops. And the more that we can do to couple those things together so that they're visible, but also develop the skill sets in parallel to work with the outputs and understand them in context, I think that's when, as an industry, we'll have solved a lot of the challenges and problems that we talk about today.
Thank you. I like Chris's point, just to sort of bring back to that and to sort of link it back to Lego. Our industry has significant amounts of data. And just like Lego, the more data that you have, the more that you can process, the more that you can model, the more that you can analyze, and more that you can build. As opposed to the reverse of that, that if you don't have enough data, you can't build what you want. So we've got a really strong position to get the benefits of the data that we have. Just as maybe a bit of a final theme for the day, there are a number of industry efforts to shift to a more open source sort of technology stack. So where do we see the path of least resistance for us all to sort of get on board with that? Is the OSDU, for those that don't know, that's the Open Subsea data universe. Is that a viable option for everyone? And also with regards to digital twin, how does that expand beyond the physical asset world that we're using today? Maybe Stuart, if I come to you first on that one.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll give you an option. You can pass it off. You can pass it off to someone else.
Chris.
No problem. I've been involved in a few of these conversations about open data standards, and I realize that there are lots of complex factors that need to be considered, some technical, but probably not nearly as many technical problems as there are cultural and behavioral, and we certainly don't have time to talk about all of those. I think we are at an exciting phase of the industry. So, you know, we have been a little bit perhaps slow in the take-up of digital technologies. In absolute terms, certainly in comparative terms, coming back to the Rio Tinto piece. And I think, you know, there has been a sort of, I think as we've gone through that journey, because we've been on the back foot, we've not been particularly forward-thinking. I think there is an opportunity now as the industry transitions, as we move into a different space, to really take advantage of this window. And I think it needs a sense of urgency. You know, as we move to different technologies for energy generation, we should insist that the deployment of those is accompanied by a data governance framework that encourages these sorts of standards, and you know, it can be done. There are great examples of you know, consortia that are in place to sort of leverage digital technologies by consolidating data and all of the challenges that comes with. And I think we can, you know, so we've got the blueprints, they exist, you know, and in some cases they exist in the energy industry. I shouldn't, you know, it's not, you know, I know the UKCS specifically has been working hard to try and do that. So I think, you know, maybe if we understand and acknowledge what's happened, you know, to date in that space, I do think there's a really exciting opportunity to take it forward, and to, you know, expose these billion data points that Andy talked about to the supply chain, which is, you know, I may be a little bit biased on this, but that's where the magic happens in any industry, to be quite frank. You look at the automotive, you look at, you know, pharma, whatever, you know, the supply chain is where that sort of, those big step changes happen in technology. So I think this is, you know, the opportunity is now, but the door will close because, you know, we'll get 5 years into the energy transition and we've all gone on our separate ways, and we're stuck where we were 5 years ago, trying to get everyone to reconsolidate or reconcile, whatever the word is. So yeah, so I think there is an opportunity, but we need to grab hold of it. Gary?
Yes, standards is my thing. So I think I agree with Chris saying we need to grab the opportunity. You know, looking at how it's worked in oil and gas, I was involved with drilling and exploration. There's a group called Energistics, which managed the multiple standards, WITSML, ResQML, ProdML, and they were made available, and that was meant to be a sort of common communication language between data consumers. So the operator had the way to get their data in on a standard. They could then share that data with a third party to do analysis of that data, support reporting, that type of thing. And that was great, but it had its challenges. You know, it's all good having a sort of a data standard that everyone can use and understand. But there's the flavors of these standards, right? It was coming down to the point where operators were, you know, contractually saying, you must provide me with this data in this standard. It was getting quite bad in that way. So the hope is going forward with things like OSDU, which is now actually taking on the Energistics side of things as well, is that we can come to a sort of common data platform that can be utilized. Now, I'm part of OSDU, and Wind Europe have got a group as well called WEDS, which is the Wind Energy Data Standards. And these groups are kind of coming together now as well. And what we're trying to do is to basically ensure that there is that common data standard, whether it's following existing standards like IEC 61400, IEC 61850, these types of standards that are available. But it's trying to bring all of that data into this single platform, you know, oil and gas plus renewables, make it all available, and also provide the open source technology to allow you to do that. Now, there are challenges around that. Of course, open source, everyone thinks, right, it's open source, we don't have to pay anything for that, we can get the best out of it. But commercial things come into it. There are free versions of certain technology, and then there's paid for versions, and that kind of puts a bit of a hamper on that. But I think the open group who manages OSDU is doing a good job of kind of keeping that intact. So, I think that these open source technologies are definitely, they're getting there. They're a little bit ways off, but they're the right way forward. They're driven by operators, supported by service companies. And the whole idea is to kind of create that ability to share data securely, to ensure that programs, software is interoperable, to ensure that collaboration is possible. And I think that's really key as well, because it's not just about having the data, it's about being able to securely share that data and make it available and also use that. Because if you can't use that and you can't collaborate and you're keeping everything, again, in your own sort of digital silo, it's very hard to kind of get the most out of that. So it's something that needs to be addressed. I think it's being done by the OSDU group and others that are involved in that. But I guess time will tell.
Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah. I'm going to throw a grenade in. I respect both of those views, but I come at it from a slightly different angle, particularly when I think about innovation. So my background, I've worked on developing new welding techniques, and in that development process and commercialization process of that technology, I worked a lot with NACE and had to get new standards implemented with NACE, and that was a 3-year journey. Similarly, with Proserv and subsea controls technology and the protocols that are used in controls in general in industry, there's been talk for about 10 years about standardizing on some kind of open protocol, so that when an operator buys a particular OEM's piece of hardware, they're not effectively single sourcing or reliant on that one OEM for the rest of that period in which that piece of equipment exists, because that OEM only knows and understands that protocol. And adapting that kind of thinking to this problem with data, my biggest concern is trying to basically scale up that box of Lego and have multiple parties agree on what the industry standard is in terms of how we organize it, naming conventions, how it's stored and managed, is a long journey, because there are so many commercially invested interests of all the different companies in our industry trying to agree. And when it finally is agreed, it'll probably be out of date in a period of time anyway, is my other concern, right? So in other words, I support the concept, but I am very concerned of A, the time that it will take, and B, that it will stifle innovation as a result, which is, and this is just my opinion, right, just for the record, but what I will say is that I do support it, and I recognise the need for it, but I think that shouldn't be a reason to wait. I think the key thing is to focus on being agile and start small. Even in my organisation, I've learned that trying to convert all of the engineering teams across all of the sites within Proserv around what our digital strategy is and what our thinking is and what our philosophy is going forwards is too much of a step initially. I've discovered recently, to my detriment, because I probably would have saved a year of my life, focusing on delivering something at scale with a core team, and then having something to show the rest of my organisation in terms of what the future looks like, I think is a much more compelling way of solving the problem.
Thanks, Stuart. So one of my just sort of final thoughts on that, if we're sort of thinking about data, and I'm going to go back to Lego again. Once you've finished your project and you put your Lego back in the box, think about who's going to be using it next and how they're going to use it. I think that draws us to a close for today. So all I would like to say is my personal thanks to Chris, Stuart and Gary for joining us on the panel today and sharing the time. My thanks to all of you for listening. What I would say is we've got about 30 minutes or so of networking time at the moment. Please do go next door and see the teams that are exhibiting. If you come back for 11 o'clock, Stephen Ashley, I think, is going to be driving the next panel. All 4 of us are still going to be here for a while. Feel free to come and have a chat, and obviously come see me if you want to play with some Lego. Thanks, guys. Thanks so much.